When I say the word power, what do you think? When I say the word power, what do you feel? It may not be at the forefront of your mind, but we all have a relationship with power, but maybe not in the way that you think. The Oxford Dictionary definition of the word power is the ability or capacity to do something in a particular way. Doesn't that mean that we all have power? And yet, there are various systems at play that make us question our power. When we look at the world stage right now, the only form of power we see is an oppressive form of power, which Dr. Brené Brown calls power over. It is a form of power that is rarely used for us. It is done to us. Power over is oppressive. Other forms of oppressive power and other systems are patriarchy, which says that men are the most powerful. And patriarchy doesn't work for men either, by the way. It diminishes their humanity too. Other systems include racism. Your skin color is wrong. Homophobia. Who you love is wrong. Transphobia. Who you are is wrong. Ableism. Your body is wrong. Xenophobia. Where you come from is wrong. And because so many of us have been told that we are inherently wrong, we have had to navigate the world with feelings of powerlessness and adopted unhelpful ways of living with powerlessness. I identify as a cisgendered Black woman, and those of us with marginalized identities are disproportionately affected by oppressive power. In the past, power was white, heterosexual, cisgendered, Christian, and male. Just like my husband of 17 years. In the past, white was always right. But we need a new form of power and a new form of leadership. A form of power that demands diversity, agency, and includes inclusive communities. Power is the ability to act or do something in a particular way. And yet, it is easy to feel devastated about what is happening in the world right now. But I choose to believe it is the beginning of the end of power over. When did you last have a fever? When a fever is at its peak, when it is at its most virulent, it is biting hard. It is gathering everything that it can to fight off what it thinks is wrong. And it is working hard. And sometimes we question, is this fever ever going to end? And then it does. And when it ends, that's when the healing begins. Right now on the world stage, the fever is at its most virulent, which means that healing is within our grasp. I bow down to Naomi Osaka, tennis champion, age 24. Simone Biles, Olympic champion gymnast, age 25, who both advocated for their mental health, for their communities, and for their colleagues, and at the same time, destabilized an institution that wasn't even created for them. Olivia Juliana, age 19, queer, Texan, Mexican, and an activist, called out misogyny and patriarchy in such a way that she raised $2.1 million in just a few days to support women to have agency over their own bodies. I am ignited by this generation of leaders. They own their power and their voices unapologetically. And then there was my relationship with power, which we can sum up in one word: powerlessness. I have an English passport and an Australian passport. I was born in England and I have Nigerian heritage. And I was one of the tens of thousands of middle-class Nigerian children who were placed with white foster parents in the unofficial foster care system in the UK in the 1960s, 70s and 80s. My parents, just like yours, I imagine, made decisions they believed would give me the best educational outcomes. And yet, we cannot deny the oppressive colonial narrative going through those decisions. I was constantly reminded of my place. Every single day, I was told, you are unintelligent, you are of no value, you are a burden, you are not beautiful. I was told in the classroom by my teachers, in the playground by fellow students, and of course by society at large. And I believed it. I believed that I was inferior to whiteness. I never questioned it. Because in my day, good girls, especially good black girls, did not ask questions. We knew our place. And to be honest, I felt proud to know my place. I felt proud to follow the rules. I'm a firstborn. We like rules. And I'm an English-born woman. To follow the rules felt like a sense of pride, like I was doing it right. Powerlessness. I never questioned it. And it has been the biggest regret of my life and the most significant teaching. Over many decades, I've had to build a sense of power for myself, to redefine power. And as an executive and personal coach, I walk alongside leaders as they redefine power for themselves, both professionally and personally. And I do agree with the Oxford Dictionary definition of power, and yet as a coach, I wanted to make that in a particular way more tangible, so that we would have some sort of stepping stone, some sort of building blocks that we could use to build power again and again and again, no matter how we identify. So what follows now are 5 components. Let's say it's a map to help you access your power, whoever you are, wherever you come from, and however you identify. P is for presence, to be aware of what is at play, internally and externally. What is working, what is not working. Our ability to be present or lack thereof dictates our ability to connect to ourselves and to others. O is for ownership. We need to integrate all of ourselves. The stories we have been told, the stories we have witnessed, the stories we have lived, the stories we have made up, and the stories we have experienced. In my first foster home, my foster parents loved country and Western music. Dolly Parton and Glenn Campbell, all days, every day. And I loved it. And when I arrived with my 5th set of foster parents, I found a cocoon. And I also found solace, and that solace came from musicals. On one wall was all of the posters and memorabilia of Les Miserables, to which I know all of the lyrics to this day. And on the other wall was all the posters and memorabilia of Miss Saigon, to which I still know all the lyrics. And yet, when I left my cocoon, I was told that was not the music I should like. I was told, but that's not black music. And so I let go of what gave me solace. I let go of who I was and took on a narrative of who I should be, instead of taking ownership of who I actually was. W is for wisdom. We all have an innate wisdom, and yet we outsource it all the time. But if we can trust our inner wisdom, it will guide us. I worked for 7 years professionally as an actor, and many of those years were spent as a lead role on television, also seasons with the Royal Shakespeare Company and the National Theatre. And I gave it all up to go and work for a man that I had met once in a pub who had bought a resort in Thailand who promised me no pay. On paper, not a great decision. But I knew I had to go, and I didn't know why. But what I do know is that that is the place that I met my husband, that white bloke that I mentioned earlier. E is for equality. We all have a role to play in reshaping inequality in the world, but we also have a role to play in owning the equality within each of us without apology. My work as a facilitator means I have the privilege to work with some of the world's poorest leaders and some of the world's richest leaders. And these groups of leaders have different access to external resources, but what is not in question is their equal humanity. And finally, R is for responsibility. If you are willing to take full responsibility for your power, you have the freedom to do with it as you choose. If power is the ability to do something or act in a particular way, what are you going to do with your power? Because this is not the time to wait for systems of old to make a more equitable world for us all. This is the time for us to stand uniquely as individuals together and as a collective. And for those of us who have been told that we are inherently wrong, what if we believe that we were right as well? I want to share some offerings, not truths, not directives, but invitations. To my non-gender conforming friends, being present to who you are is a form of power. To my cisgendered hetero Anglo men, taking full ownership of your story is power. To my queer friends, trusting your wisdom and knowing who you love is power. To people of colour, knowing that we are equal without a question is power. And to my Anglo sisters, taking full responsibility for your unasked for privileges is power. And when we stand uniquely in our power, we're not afraid of the power of other people. If I can own my power, I'm not fearful of yours. In fact, I want to elevate and ignite your power, and I want to stand with you, and I want to honour you. We are creating a new world, a world where we must take up space and be in places that we have been told we are not allowed to be. We are creating a new world, a world where we must use our voices and lived experience without apology. The world needs a new kind of leader. Leaders that are focused on the collective humanity of everybody. Here is my final invitation to you. Know who you are. Be present. Take ownership. Trust your wisdom. Know that you are equal. And take responsibility. Power to you. Power to us all.